Yo, this is a compilation of all the theories I've mentioned in my videos, my reviews or reactions of the One Piece chapters throughout this year, starting from chapter 1162 all the way to 1189. These are all theories. It's a range starting from random thoughts, ideas at the spur of the moment, to well thought out dissertations about, some One Piece topic that I had in the back of my brain for years. Also, there's a scale of trollness. I always have kind of a, comedic style or whatever. But definitely some theories are more serious than others. But I included pretty much everything that I could categorize as a theory, and also some instances of those theories being proven wrong or correct. Well, these theories are in chronological order for simplicity, and also because some of them depend on previous ideas or build upon them. But feel free to skip around. I have all the timestamps below. Anyway, enough of this preamble bullshit. Enjoy. Let's see. He has bluish hair, sports a starry speedo, and he has a knack for anatomy modification.
Twins.
Is the transformation caused by a different ability? He asks. I must say, no. Imagine in the final battle winning against Imu by tricking him into petting some sea stone butterflies. Zebek describes a torture a Davy man would endure at the hands of the government as worse than hell, which means he either has personal experience or heard about another victim. How about the original Davy Jones, who was punished, cursed to wander the seas aimlessly and eternally as a fucking oversized elephant? Eris, by the way, looks suspiciously similar to Guinea. Guinea in the future, grown up, because the actual Guinea is also there. So, it's her mother, why not? Wait, but then Blackbeard would be Bonnie's uncle. Yikes. Let go of your knees, you creep. Speaking of Blackbeard, I gotta say, Lil Teach looks a bit like a young Hody Jones, who shares the surname of Blackbeard's ancestor, Mr. Davy Jones the First. I'm speculating a link there. Remember how Buccaneers have giant blood? What if the Davy guys have some fishman flowing in their veins? That's why Blackbeard sails in a fucking raft. He's not afraid of the deep. Now let's talk about Imu. Of course, Imu and the world go hand in hand, since he created it. If we believe Imu's worshippers, the creator, the architect, the author of the story. What story? The story in which the characters of the One Piece world are trapped in, forced to follow its trope and cliché, also called by some fate. Imu is the fate writer. He can control that shit. Except the initial D lineage. Very convenient, considering there are 3 of them right in front of Imu. But that's why those are exactly the characters that spoil the party. And also the reason why my man David Zebek will not get fucking controlled. No way. A more likely scenario would be him landing on the neck of the tarantula and starting to ride it bareback, thus fulfilling his dream of getting on top of the world.
I'm the king of the world!
Mark my words. My man Zebek will not get fucking controlled. No way. What the fuck? What the fuck, man?
Motherfucker, what the fuck? Motherfucker, what the fuck? What?
Imu seemingly can manipulate devil fruits to the fullest and beyond, which would be appropriate if Imu is the creator of devil fruits. That would make him the devil farmer. That's why Imu has that giant straw hat in the freezer to keep him cool under the burning sun when he's plowing the field. One Piece is a paparazzi picture of Imu without the trash bag covering the head, revealing a ghastly figure. And an embarrassing fact, Imu has no mouth. That's what made Roger and his crew piss themselves from laughter, wondering, that's the ruler of the world? The same guy or gal from God Valley? But maybe there is hope after all. Zebek could compose himself, contain the conversion, conquer it with conquerors, courageously continue confronting this cunt until completely collapsing as a corpse. Go out fighting to save his family and also make Davy Jones proud, who probably promised to fight Imu himself but gets trapped wandering in the ocean. Alright. When you're wrong, you're wrong. And I admit it. You're wrong. He also expressed telepathically, or through the voice of all things, to Roger and Garp his wish to die. Side note, if we consider then other life forms that can use the voice of all things, such as the Sea Kings that stopped Noah in Fishman Island, or Zunisa, is it fair to say that they were also transformed by some power, that they were originally people? For example, let me introduce you to my boy here, the yellow frog. Guys, this is Binks. Binks, guys. You know, the owner of the sake. All the while, Garp is wondering, can we undo this curse somehow? Valid question. Guess we'll never know the answer, since you killed him.
Murderer!
However, we can assume that if this transformation is indeed caused by a devilhood ability, a reversal should be possible. For instance, in Dressrosa, the toys created by devilhood power reverted back to their original form when Sugar got spooked into unconsciousness. And the toys there were permanently transformed. Heroes was a toy for 10 years, for example. The real question is, can Imu do the same? Have an army of demons forever at his disposal? And if so, where is it? Underground? Like the toy workers enslaved in Dressrosa? Have we seen it? I mean, the only demon-looking guy I can think of is Magellan. But he's cool. He's actually fighting demons in the toilet. I find it very interesting that when Imu's curse dissipates and Rox regains his consciousness, the first thing he sees when he opens his eyes is the world upside down. From his perspective, this could be a hint from Oda, foreshadowing that after the final war, after finally defeating the world, Imu, and the curse is lifted worldwide, then, besides the world government being overturned, the world will be turned over, turned upside down in some literal sense. That begs the question, how exactly do you turn a sphere upside down? Well, it's not a golf ball. The One Piece world has distinctive characteristics. You could, for example, reverse the poles, north to south, south to north, flip the hemispheres. I don't know why or how. A more fitting scenario would be to reverse the highest point in the world with the lowest, meaning lower Merijoa to the bottom of the sea and lift Fishman Island up to the surface, so the fishmen can live under the sun. The old switcheroo. The celestial dragons will dive 10,000 meters below sea level, and the fishmen will catapult somewhere on solid ground. I don't think they want to be too close to the sun, especially Icarus. He'd be fried. As we know, a guy with a straw hat is destined to destroy Fishman Island, according to Madame Sarle's prophecy. So the predominant theory all these years has been that Luffy will destroy Merijoa along the red line above Fishman Island, and as a result, destroy Fishman Island too with the falling debris and shit. Obliterating the red line at that location will also reveal the Sunlight Tree Eve, which is still a mystery to this day. That's the tree that illuminates and provides oxygen for Fishman Island. Eve may be enclosed in the red line. That would mean its branches and leaves emerge on top of the red line to gather sunlight, probably reaching Imu's favorite, the flower room. That would explain the greenery there and the butterflies. It's the only place with naturally looking plant life in Merijoa. Everything else seems artificial. Plus the red line soil looks pretty dead. I believe Imu is hogging Eve because it holds the secret to his immortality. The Ope operation was a distraction all along. Side note, the flower room has suspiciously similar architecture and color scheme to Eni's lobby. White and terracotta. And of course, both Eni's lobby and the flower room are always bathed in sunlight. Also remember a fucking giant hole in the middle of Eni's lobby? Where did that chunk go? Could be up there? As a great philosopher once said,
Anything's possible! Anything's possible!
Before a massive lightning splits the heavens. Is that the same lightning that rescued Luffy from execution on the Logtown platform? If that's the case, you're a little late this time, lightning. But seriously, what the fuck happened back then? I remember, because I'm old, everyone saying it was Dragon's Devil Fruit, or it was Dragon's Haki, or even that it was a coincidence. And if someone dared to say it was fate, the others would look at him weird. But now, I'm pretty sure it's the exact opposite. If you say it wasn't the heavens, or destiny, or Joyboy's spirit bolt, you're a filthy casual. In that case, my grand theory is that the world of One Piece is inside a manga. A manga inside a manga. Don't ask for proof. Just know that me and Oda are like this. So then fate becomes a synonym for the author's will, who is Imu or something. And the heavens opening is like a portal to escape back to reality. A tear on the manga page to return to the free world. Told you theories have gone insane. The Roger Pirates open some chests to find inside the greatest treasure there is. Gold. Maybe this is another hint from Oda, this time about the ultimate treasure, the One Piece. A clue that implies maybe the real treasure is the embryos we made along the way. I think this event, though, eliminates the possibility of One Piece being a person, because no one laughed here. Besides Baby Shanks. Well, maybe the second time it's funnier. Imagine, after spending years grinding to be the first in history to circumnavigate the world, while nurturing one baby to finally reach the finish line for the grand prize of another one.
Another one. Another one.
Zebek, though, believes the one with the power to destroy the world is Harald, with the help of some sleeping giants. Usually, when people talk about the ability to destroy the world, they are referring to the ancient weapons, or Whitebeard's devil fruit. The only unaccounted for ancient weapon is Uranus. I'm sure everybody knows by now, but Uranus in Greek mythology was the god of urine. But more importantly, he was the father of giants, or titans, same thing. So I guess Roxy suggesting Harald possesses Uranus, or is Uranus. Never mind, he's dead. Harald, determined, set sail for the old Navy HQ Marineford to ask for forgiveness for the 1,000 years worth of sins of the giant race by yanking out his horns.
Hey, how'd you do that without shaving cream?
Now that's a worthy, brutally honest apology. But what sins are we talking about? Speaking of, Zunisa also committed some sin or crime about 1,000 years back. What if they were in cahoots, partners in crime? Maybe Zunisa was the getaway vehicle. Real quick theory to start things off. You saw the title, Jokes Are Banned. If we believe Dressrosa is a microcosm of the One Piece world, then Doflamingo's reign is a parallel to the world government's regime, right? Now, in Doffy's family, there was a rule. If anyone laughs at one of the family members, that means death. We saw an instance where a guy laughed at Pika's voice and got immediately murked by Baby 5. So the theory is this. What if someone, let's say Joyboy, made a joke about Imu, who then got triggered and banned jokes or laughter? What if what Roger and the crew read in Laugh Tale was that joke that made them burst into laughter? Yeah, flex on the Gorosei. Quick side note, seeing Harald in the Gorosei room puts in perspective the Pangea castle size. Seems a lot more befitting of an ancient giant rather than humans. It's stolen. There's no way it was built for humans. Someone picked it up from the ancient kingdom of ancient giants with an ancient weapon and put it up there as a permanent reminder of who's on top for the losers of the war. Chapter title, Elbaf Snow. Side note, let's talk about snow. Back in Whiskey Peak, Luffy made this masterpiece, Mr. Snowman, the man who fell from the sky. What? Oh yeah, makes sense. Snow does indeed fall from the sky. Mr. Snowman there punched a hole through the head of Snow Queen, the icy sculpture of Usopp. Just a random scene of boys fucking around, right? At the end of Whiskey Peak, Luffy is all giddy about snowing, and he's sure it will happen again for some reason. That's a very odd way of finishing a story arc, which had nothing to do with snow. Afterwards, when the crew is reaching the Drum Kingdom, Luffy is once again thrilled about all the snow covering the mountains, spouting things like, "I'm in heaven," and "Snow is so white and nice." In that same arc, we also get the infamous quote from Luffy, "People in snow countries don't sleep." because they'll die. Maybe the weirdest sentence spoken by Luffy in One Piece history. Later, after leaving Alabasta, Luffy asks Nami if the next island will be snowy, to which he replies, "You've had enough snow." Finally, in Punk Hazard, Luffy is as expected, excited about half of it, the snowy half. I'm saying finally because that's where I stopped and asked myself, what the fuck are you doing? So I don't have a firm conclusion to this train of thought. But hear me out. On a snowy day, from the heavens fell baby Luffy, and one day he will battle against the Snow Queen, Imu, who is white as snow beneath the trash bag, because she never goes out in the sun, as she strives to be forever young and doesn't want the wrinkles and shit. Luffy will punch through the hair of Imu, finally putting her to sleep. She never slept before, that's why she always has red bloodshot eyes. The end. And she never stops smiling. Even at her final moment, she died smiling. As I said before, there are many characters that died smiling without possessing the D initial in their name. So I think Oda used that image to portray characters who have no regrets, who accepted their fate. Also, it looks cool. Let me take a stab at Loki's potential devil powers. I think he could have the mythical zone fruit of the Jormungandr, which is a big snake. He gives off that snake vibe, plus the goatee is a dead giveaway of serpents. I think Jormungandr reindeer, Merry Christmas, is depicted with a beard sometimes. Also, Ja Rule said eating this fruit would mean the end of the world. That's when Jormungandr is released, according to Nordic lore, isn't it? When the world serpent that encircles the world stops biting its tail, that's the signal for the beginning of Ragnarok, the apocalyptic war in which the gods are fate to die and the world to be destroyed. Or something like that. I need to freshen up on my Viking mythology. But Ja Rule said that about Harald eating the fruit, not Loki. What's the difference? Rox also said that he needed 2 devil fruits to take over the world, one of which was in Elbaf and should be eaten by Harald to maximize its potential. Rox specified that Harald would make it work because he's the current king of Elbaf. He was referring to commanding the frozen army of giants as well, but the two must be connected. I mean, why would the giants listen to a snake if it's not wearing a crown? Am I right? Responding to Shanks, who prefers life at sea in the end, Gyatban says, we call that fate. What? What the fuck are you talking about? Maybe we should talk about fate. It's a piping hot topic nowadays because I said so. You don't have to go far to find someone mentioning the concept of fate in One Piece. Just 1169 chapters and 27 years back. Back to chapter 1, when the narrator said, Luffy's great voyage of destiny has begun. Then again, in chapter 2, he goes, the 2 young adventurers, Kobe and Luffy, sail towards the naval base. And destiny. And even before that, Kobe was like, I guess it's my fate to be a cabin boy for the rest of my life. Well, Luffy came and changed that. He changed the course of fate. Now, I'm not gonna go through the whole manga and find every instance of the word fate/destiny being uttered. That would be ridiculous. Stay tuned for that. But you see, the theme of fate has been in the story since literally the dawn. Roman's dawn. Which is ironic, because this is a story about choosing your own path, following your dream, and freedom. I can't think of anything more antithetical to those themes than the forced sequence of events imposed by the absolute universal law that is fate. Maybe that's the point though. Luffy's destiny is to defy destiny. It's the battle of determination versus determinism. And the only ones who can change the course of fate are the bearers of the will of D, the will of destiny. Destroyers. It's a double D in a world. In a world governed by fate, Luffy's free will free the world from the world government. We don't wanna babble on about fate too much, so let's focus on one of the most prominent examples of its importance in the story. Let's turn the clock back and head to Jaya. In Jaya, we got introduced to the main antagonist of the series. Yeah, fuck you, Imu. The Blackbeard Pirates. Even before reaching the island of Jaya, we saw the sniper of the Blackbeard Pirates, Mr. Fate himself, Van Ogre. Every time he opens his mouth, he mentions fate. It's in his contract or something. Van Ogre shoots some birds in the sky and says, "Poor things, how they must suffer." But that's fate, such as the vagaries of life. No, that's you, the rifle. After dropping anchor, Luffy, Zoro and Nami wander around Mocktown and stumble upon Doc Q, the doctor of the Blackbeard crew. Doc Q is obsessed with luck, which is like fate mixed with randomness. It's fate minus the grand plan. Luffy always claimed he was lucky, and this time he got a chance to prove it by eating one of Doc Q's apples. Oh yeah, he carried a basket of red apples around to treat people. An apple a day, you know. Anyway, Luffy picks up and eats something that looks like an ordinary apple. Because it's an ordinary apple. One of the few that wasn't crammed with C4 explosives. You're a lucky boy, is Doc Q's diagnosis for Luffy. Then we get the fateful encounter with Blackbeard himself at the bar. Luffy sits beside Blackbeard and they both start tasting some slices of apple pie with opposite reactions. Blackbeard, finds it delicious while Luffy's disgusted. They follow it up by sipping some sake and their reactions flip. That prompts them to start bickering over nothing, really. And they're even ready to scrap, almost as if they're fated to be enemies. Later, after exploring Jaya, the crew met Mont Blanc Cricket. Remember this guy? We learned from Cricket that for 400 years, a bunch of Mont Blancs tried to find the City of Gold to restore family honor. The City of Gold that their ancestor, Mont Blanc Noland, swore existed, but couldn't prove it. But Cricket didn't try any of that shit. Instead, feeling ashamed, he became a pirate to get away from Noland's cares. The cares of being a filthy liar. While sailing 10 years ago, he happened to land on Jaya. In Jaya was the supposed City of Gold from Noland's tale. Cricket was the only one from his family that managed to reach it. And that's when he realized, fate brought me here. There's no escaping it. Towards the end of the arc, when the Blackbeard crew is formally revealed, Blackbeard is surprised Van Ogre hasn't mentioned fate yet, so he does it instead. If we miss him, that's fate, he says, referring to meeting Lafitte, his missing crew member. And now, the grand finale. After chasing the Straw Hats, who escaped to the sky via the knock-up stream, the Blackbeard Pirates are left drifting in the middle of the ocean. Doc Q begins by proclaiming how lucky the Straw Hats are, followed by Van Ogre's spiel, "This world is one big, endlessly turning wheel. The wheel of fate. If our will is strong enough, we'll meet them again." The end. The squirrel allows Loki to eat the legendary devil fruit, and he transforms into a silhouette. Hey, I thought Imu had that fruit. We don't see what it is, but it has claws, spiky hair, and it's fucking huge. The first thing that comes to mind is the wolf Fenrir. I imagine Loki looking like this. The brass knuckles are a must. As Loki winds up for the final hit, Harald's last words are, "I love you." 2. While smiling. He becomes the latest addition to the long list of characters who died smiling. But it throws a wrench in my theory about those characters having no regrets, because, Harald should have nothing but regrets. Regretting abandoning his best friend Rox, slaving for 20 plus years for the world government, instead of being with Ida and his beloved sons back home, balding, becoming a member of the God's Knights, and of course, having his own son kill him. So, I guess we need to find a different common denominator. But that's for the future. Maybe that's it actually. Characters that sacrifice themselves for a better future. As the final blow impacts, a fucking humongous thunderbolt strikes from the heavens and makes Harald dematerialize Loki cries, while a memory of young Harald flashes, closing with Harald's fleeting thoughts of Elbaf's future. And let's not forget the kids playing in the snow. Remember the snow! Don't forget about his secret eye cares hidden beneath the toilet paper. My theory is he will awaken that cursed power in tandem with Zoro when they'll both open their eyes to unleash a beam versus Imu. Come on, you're not telling me Zoro just happened to lose an eye only to look fly for his post-time skip design? Yeah, right. After 10,000 fucking chapters. I think we've established that everything in One Piece is pre-planned, deliberate, has a purpose. I mean, do you really think Sanji's eyebrows aren't chock full of deadly spiral energy to counter the whirlpools in all blue? Previously, I had an idea about the whole immortality thing bestowed upon the gods and knights being a scam. Something like Hawkins' ability, which makes him immortal, let's say, but results in the mortality of other people in his place. Think every time one of the gods' knights receives a fatal wound, a random poor fucker from a world government-affiliated nation croaks. That would be pretty suspicious, though. People randomly falling like flies. Nah. But no one is actually immortal. Mark my words. As Binks once said, doesn't matter who you are, one day you'll just be bones. Though Imu's talking about something else entirely. Imu's explaining that for every covenant he creates, he must pay a toll in some way. Maybe he loses lifespan. But last time I checked, his lifespan was infinity. Maybe he given a piece of his soul? How about one of his many souls? What if he has all the souls of the slain ancient kingdom citizens stockpiled under the hat? Never forget, Elbaf is of the D. Interesting wording. What could the D stand for in that sentence? Let's solve that mystery once and for all. Let's see. Elbaf is of the Dream, Dragon, Drawings. That's mine. Dawn, Doom, Dusk, Dead, Damned, Destiny, Deus, Devil, Dave, Deep, Democracy, Destruction, Dynasty, Dharma, and my personal favorite, D, as in Vitamin D. You get it from the sun, and it makes you happy, which makes you smile. Sun, smile, sun god, Nika. In this case, the only thing we can see is that he's reaching for a sword. But let me take a stab at it nonetheless. Okay, I think his plan is to use that sword to pole vault himself and land in between Dorian Brogy's legs. But as soon as the Domi reverse starts affecting him, he'll transform into Asu, countering becoming a demon by becoming a demon. Then he'll pose as one of Imu's minions while using his 3 heads to fight an actual plan. Summers laughs his ass off. I feel like there's something there with all this laughing and smiling from Summers. Like a message from Oda that there are 2 kinds of laughter / smiling. There's this evil one where you laugh at someone else's expense, and then there is the one from Ripley when she's hugging her son there. The smile which expresses that even though I'm hurting, everything's gonna be alright. Something like that. This actually reminds me of good old East Blue, you know, in the Arlong arc, when Belle Mare turned to Nami Nojiko, said, "I love you," and smiled, right before Arlong pulling the trigger and shooting her in the head, killing her. And Arlong, I'm pretty sure, was fucking laughing too. This is the "I love you" smile. It's actually kinda like the Corazon one, right before dying. He also said "I love you" to Law. So Luffy now has rode 2 dragons, Momo and Loki. Or 3 if we're counting Kaido. So the D is the Dragon Rider. I did have a theory back then that the D meant dragon. The only problem with that was my boy Luffy's father would be called Monkey Dragon Dragon. The sun god in the picture here in the flashback is black. What? I thought he had pale white skin. Is he possessed by Imu? What the fuck is going on? Also, Zoro used the phrase locked horns. And of course, as we know, Nika has no fucking horns, but one of the perks of getting possessed by Imu is getting that devil package on your head. Unfortunately, I can zoom in his smile, Nika's smile, to distinguish if he's good or evil by analyzing his teeth. Because, in the previous video I said, if you have pointy teeth, you're evil. Whatever. A little throwback. So I guess this is Tommy reversed Nika. Kina. Also another thing. Am I tripping, or is that symbol on the shield of our good friend Tommy reversed evil dark possessed Nika there? That symbol. Isn't that like the tattoo that Harald got? Did I say Harald? What the fuck? I meant Harald. It's also snowing on the background. This must be what Vegapunk was trying to recreate in Punk Hazard. And failed miserably, I might add. Well, he was a double agent. Here's my final thought before my brain melts. Is that supposed to be Uranus? How cooked am I? I mean, it would make sense for Imu to search for ancient weapons. And also, it would be fitting for Uranus to be a creature that controls the elements while flying, soaring in the sky. Because, Uranus literally means sky. And this fucker here breathes lightning. And that energy converted into a fucking soda. Now imagine we get that shit into the 1000 Sunny. Because Sun is also powered by cola. Imagine how far it can fly. It can fly over the red line. Or it can shoot a fucking gown cannon to tear down Mary Joa. They didn't use their own strength at all in this invasion. They relied on those monsters. And since Chopper is also a monster, he can interact with them or put them back into the monster world. And then have Monster Chopper smacking the ink demon out of that fucker there. What is going on? There's no way that was a fatal blow. He didn't even scratch him. He must have found a different method. This kind of reminds me of Thriller Bark, when they were feeding the zombies salt to get the shadows out of them. This time, it's just plain old assault. Okay, that does the trick. But seriously, what is going on? By the way, that flipping of the ground there, of that magical circle on the side, looks like the fucking sun. So there are multiple ways of turning someone back, de-demonize him. Again, like in Thriller Bark, when you could feed the zombies salt or make them catch fire, like what happened to Ryuma to get the shadow out, or you could defeat Moria. Actually, you had to make Moria give the command for the shadows to return to their rightful owners. Now, in Imu's case, we know that you can kill the demon to bring back the original self, and also now smack the shit out of him. What's so special about Chopper? He did just gabble a rumble ball. He used PEDs. Did that play a role? I don't see how that's relevant. Maybe he's the natural enemy of Imu. Fucking reindeer man. Perhaps it's time we learn what is the actual devil fruit that Chopper ate. The Hito Hito no Mi model Jesus Christ. Shit. I mean, Buddha exists. Who else could have slapped a demon out of possessed individual? Unfortunately, we don't get a good look of the place, the exact spot where he got hit. If that's important, I don't know. The key is to do a karate chop on the Adam's apple. I'm actually trying to find a serious theory, but I can't. Okay, I figured it out. The only weakness to Imu's powers are humans. And by that I mean guys who ate human devil fruits. Every other quote-unquote human is actually not a human. Alright, seriously now. Remember the first time Chopper used the monster point in Enies Lobby? It is a bit similar, I guess, to those demons of Imu. Because first of all, he got larger, he got bigger, stronger. His horns grew like the devil horns of these fuckers. But most importantly, he lost consciousness. And he had those white eyes, like this guy here. Also, Chopper, when he takes those rumble balls, he's somehow manipulating his devil fruit. The wavelength of the devil fruit, he said, something like that. So it's easy, just getting the same wavelength as the devil. Then Imu says, this battle shall divide the world. What does that mean? Of course, Jarul said something similar about the Harley prophecy. And speaking of this divide, of course, the world of One Piece is already divided by the red line into two halves, like the left and right hemisphere. But maybe we'll get a different divide, a different literal divide, up and down. You know, the celestial dragons are up in their god realm, and below a certain point, I don't know. It will be the rest of the planet. I guess it would be the celestial dragons and sky islands or something. And they will try to flood the world below for a great cleansing. I guess Imu could also be speaking metaphorically. The world will be divided into, I guess, the world government and all of its allies. Who are their allies, by the way? And you know, everyone else who will fight against them. Of course, it could also be both. But Oda has been introducing a lot of flight into the story recently. Like we had Kaido in dragon form, who could not only fly, but fucking float a whole island with his power. Even Big Mom flew with Zeus. Also in the same arc we had Momonosuke's future dragon transformation. Then, on Egghead, there was a sky island, an artificial sky island, so there is technology that can make islands float. Let's not forget the Iron Giant. Wait, did he fly? Also, Vegapunk made Vega Force 1, a robot inspired by the Iron Giant that definitely flew with rockets. Now we get Nidhogg, an even bigger dragon than all the other dragons we saw before. And let's not forget the Thousand Sunny, man. Especially if we get some Vega Cola to give a power boost to the Kude burst. So yeah, it's almost as if Oda is preparing us for traveling through the sky. And how could I forget Morgan's hot air balloon? Shit. My brain is fucked now. I've reached my daily limit of making sense. But let me close with this. At some point, we also need to turn the world upside down, right? According to Roger. So we'll first divide it, turn it upside down, and then combine, make it one piece again. I also had an incomplete theory about the world of One Piece being two worlds in one. So if we divide it, then wait, we would go back to them being two worlds. We'll fuck one of the worlds up and keep the good one. No. Maybe that's what the red line is doing. It's actually keeping the worlds together, like fucking electrical tape. Okay, I told you, now I'm past the limit, past the point of no return. In that case, the red line would not be dividing the world, but keeping together the two different worlds. Now, what are these worlds that I'm talking about? I'm not sure, but one of them must have been brought here by Imu. It's the evil world. As we know, Imu is heralded as the creator of the world. And also, Imu sits on that fucking throne, which is at the center of the world, right? Maybe Imu needs to be there to hold the shit together, you know, the glue of the red line. It's the world of light and the world of darkness. Now it makes sense why the second half of the Grand Line is called New World. It's the second world that Imu fucking merged into the original planet or something. I'm gonna keep talking till I make sense. We're gonna be here for fucking hours, till the dawn. I mean, if Imu is the devil, Imu must have brought in the devil fruits from the devil world. I remember someone saying they're not from this world about the devil fruits. I think it was Kaku when they were about to eat the fruits that Spandam brought. Speaking about this whole world thing, I had another flash about the secret or sacred treasure of Mary Joa that would shake the world. Huh? Now it makes sense, right? Because it will be divided. But they also said that about the One Piece treasure. Isn't that what Whitebeard said in Marineford? Actually, I think he said it will turn the world upside down. So we're back on that. Well, maybe one of the worlds is the upside down from Stranger Things. The world of monsters. I don't know. Demons. Well, my other grand theory, the theory that I have in my heart for years now, is that the world of One Piece is inside like a manga or something like that. A story, a some kind of fiction. That's why Imu is fucking made of ink. Imu is the pencil. If only thou were erased from the world. With your magical eraser, Imu is the author of the manga world that we're in. Yeah, that was a brief theory from the previous video. Imu gives us some info about Loki's pirating days, presumably. I thought she was talking about Thriller Bark for a second. Hey, maybe that was his ship, actually. I mean, if you think about the size of Thriller Bark, it was fit for ancient giants, as we saw with oars there. And Imu is talking about some foggy, spooky regions. Also, that's where we saw Lola, who remember was supposedly going to marry Loki. As expected, says Imu. So you expected it not to work, huh? These two are truly ... Should have Domi reverse Dragnir. Why are they immune though? Why are they unaffected? Luffy's immune to lightning, poison, and brain control, or soul control, whatever that is. Well, actually, he was controlled by Miss Golden Week. She's stronger than Imu, the real final boss. He was also hypnotized by Django. Well, of course, he was in Nika form back then. I'm just saying random shit. What about Loki though? Because he's the god of war, the Nidhogg, the god of war and the sun god. Doesn't work on gods. In the middle of all this chaos, someone robbed the library. At least we have a suspect. Fucking owl. Owls love books. We know that. Don't get me started on my theory of birds. All I'm gonna say is this. Imu is a fucking bird, man. Or she's being controlled by a bird. Like how Hattori, the pigeon, was controlling Lucci. Imu is being controlled by a parrot. Okay, but here's a serious theory about how we will defeat Imu in the end. Remember in Thriller Bark? When the guys in the crew tried to assimilate to make a robot warrior. But Robin didn't dock. Well, in the final war, she will. And that will be the final form of the crew. And also this time, Luffy will be there. And this is foreshadowed by all the times Luffy got starry-eyed looking at a robot. At a beam. But what the fuck is this heart? You see that little circle there? That looks like a watch or something? That's like the meter thing that celestial dragons have in their spacesuits. Or, even weirder than that, I mean, he is a celestial dragon, of course, but the space pirates in the moon from Enel's space mission, you know, the cover story when he went there. Now that I take a closer look at that Summers panel, am I supposed to believe that the heart was inside the head? I don't know if that was obvious, but a very suspicious placement of the heart there, in between the two parts. But why would you even have a heart if you don't bleed? It's a heart that pumps ink. So this heartless bastard actually has a heart? Well, I mean, it's an imitation heart. The whole heart thing is very important, you know, having a heart. Not just literally, but as a theme in the One Piece story. I can't really go in deep now, but for example, Dr. Hiro Luke said to Chopper, of course you can become a doctor. You have the most important thing, a big heart. You know, kindness and shit. But that's why Chopper can get the demons out. I'm still on that. Also, Dr. Hiro Luke said something like, before dying, right? I may be gone, but my dream will live on. Okay, he said that. And then he goes and the sick hearts of the people will be healed. That was his mission as a doctor, right? To heal the hearts and shit. And what was the cure? Cherry blossoms. And Dalton wanted the country to have a heart. Also in Dressrosa, I mean the whole Dressrosa arc is about hearts and love, and that's another story. But I remember Viola. She was talking to her father, King Riku, and she was saying that we have to trust the Straw Hats, right? With the future of this country. Because unlike the world government, who allowed Doflamingo to be in the position, you know, to rule as a tyrant, unlike those fuckers, the Straw Hats have heart. I'm pretty sure she said something like that, man. I will go and find that shit. So she made a clear distinction between Straw Hats and the guys we fight now. The fucking world government, man. Those heartless freaks. Holy Land will be without move for a short while. Would Imu really be going there? Where? No way she goes to Elbaf. you don't have the balls. We see Imu saying that she will take a leave of absence to go somewhere. I don't believe she would go to Elbaf. I mean, she just said the last chapter that she doesn't sully her hands, right? Probably gonna go hide somewhere. That would be more in character. Maybe she will go into that other world from, you know, the video before I did. The second world, the world of darkness, the upside down, to amass a dark army for the final war. Now that she saw that she got owned. Well, I take everything back, I said, Imu. I mean, last chapter I said, you don't have the balls to show up in Elbaf. You showed me. Here's a theory I just came up with. What if the silhouetted version of Imu in Mary Joa, the one that is always on the flower room, fingering butterflies, is the caterpillar version? And then, when he needs to pop out and sprawl into action to go for a brawl, like in this case, he undergoes metamorphosis. And a butterfly is born that crawls out from the back, as we saw, and takes the form of one of the first 20, which would mean there are 18 other figures. Because remember, the Nefertari family didn't join. Perhaps that was the one piece that was missing. So according to this theory, Imu is just the latest edition of the creator of the world, of the king of the world, which would probably rotate every some years, I don't know, every second Olympics. But the problem is, now that the butterfly is out, good luck trying to put it back into the cocoon. Now it's gone. So this guy is fucked. Maybe that's why the Gorosei were so apprehensive, so fearful of dear Imu leaving Mary Joa. Because after leaving the silhouette, once you go out of black, you never go back. So I'm saying it now. Rest in peace to Imu. This guy here, he can never return to his prior state under that trash bag. By the way, now that Imu left Mary Joa, it would be a good time for good old Blackbeard to go and sit on the fucking throne to fulfill his mentor Davy Jones' promise. And maybe hand some mythical zone devils from those 5 elders. And don't forget the snow in the background. Somehow that will be important. I swear. Imu claims he was actually hurt the most. Is that because you didn't add Elbaf to your collection of world government nations? By the way, is that what those dots on your body represent? 1 dot for each kingdom that has been assimilated. There should be about 170. Oh, and also, that dot pattern is also present on that empty throne chair. You know, on the top, on that back cushion. Imu starts his spiel about strength. He's saying corruption is the way for immense strength and shit. By submitting your will, forfeiting your willpower, your freedom, and sign the contract, a covenant. Similar to selling your soul, he says, when their envy drives them, they'll achieve power. The use of the word envy there is peculiar. Do you mean jealousy? Or more like ill will? It's the dark side of will. Well, maybe it's something similar to what Blackbeard felt when he saw Thatch snatch his coveted devil fruit, and he had to kill him to obtain the dark powers. So he committed murder in order to get more powerful. But also maybe he forfeited his will somehow because he said to Ace, I didn't have a choice. This power has chosen me. The power made the choice for him. Those 3 things form a trinity, known as Dominion. I'm not sure what the fuck that means, but the number 3 seems to be important. Remember that Imu can create 3 different types of covenants in 3 different levels. Also, he has those 3 skulls on his belt for some reason. By the way, another side tangent, Blackbeard also famously is deeply connected with the number 3. 3 skulls in his flag, 3 pistols on his waist, 3 claws on his weapon, 3 teeth missing from his mouth. I don't know about the last one, but you get the point. Is there a difference between a god and a devil? Let me answer that for you. Yes. What are you trying to say? That, it depends on your perspective. It's all relative. Who's the good guy and the bad guy? Well, I mean, I guess you can take that position. Like they're both sides of the same coin and shit. Well, I'm pretty sure I'm not a biblical scholar or anything, but didn't God create the devil? So there is, a hierarchy. And before you start saying, what the fuck, why are you talking about the Bible and shit? Remember Kuma's Bible? It didn't have fucking Nika on the front. It had someone like, I think it was like a female deity. Something like the Holy Mary or, I don't know, Mary Jo. Also, when Sabo was, narrating the whole Mary Jo events that transpired with him fleeing, wounded by Imu and shit, during that storytelling, Ivankov there, when he mentioned that one of the first 20 was Saint Imu of the House Nerona, he had a book opened that in the front it said Genesis on the front cover. Plus we got other stuff like the Adam tree, the Eve tree, freaking Noah. Even the devil fruits are inspired by the forbidden apple on the Garden of Eden. Or forbidden fruit. Was it stated that it was an apple specifically? I don't know. But my interpretation of that question from Imu is this. He's saying that the difference between a god and a devil, good and evil, is who the fuck is on top, you know what I mean? Like, in the Bible again, God banished the devil, right? From the heavens, from heaven. I'm not familiar with the specific details, but I know that the devil fell from the heavens. That's why he's called the fallen angel, right? Anyway, in this case, Imu is the one who remained on top of the red line. In Mary Joa, the Holy Land, and also all the celestial dragons have the saint honorific, and the residence of those saints is called Realm of the Gods, in which Imu reigns supreme, sitting on his godly empty throne. And he probably exiled Joyboy, the original god, or Nika, In some way, I feel like the concepts, the realms of the devil and the god flipped, and also heaven and hell in the One Piece world. Because, Mary Jo is supposed to be, again, the Holy Land, which would coincide with the heaven, but as we know, the Geoise and this fucker are like demons and the devil, with those pentagrams and your devilish horns and shit. Also, when Sabo went there and faced all of them in their awakened zone forms, he said, I didn't know hell was gonna be up here on the top of the world. And if we consider this possibility, this scenario of the hell being on top and, the heaven should be, I don't know, on the bottom somewhere, the sunken ancient kingdom or something, at the bottom of the ocean, like Fishman Island. Anyway, if we consider that to be true, then the whole, we need to flip the world upside down. That quote from Roger makes more sense now, right? And that's what Whitebeard said also, about finding the One Piece. It will turn the world upside down. Well, at least that's my view. Oh, and another thing that I just thought about. Speaking of the whole God and devil debate, this could be like a hint about the meaning of D. The D initial. This is potentially another point for the D means devil hypothesis. The will of the devil, which would make sense if this guy is the god for his sworn enemies to be devils. I don't know if everyone would be the devil, or the carriers of the will of the devil. Also, it would make the statement by Corazon back in Dressrosa about in some place they scare the children by telling them the D is gonna eat you if you don't finish your Brussels sprouts. I don't remember the full quote. Anyway, then we have another weird statement from Mr. Nerona. The world itself rejoices in a state of dominion, followed by a Joyboy flashback. And from what I understand, they're both fucking laughing there, Imu and Joyboy. Why are you talking about the whole world? Is this guy supposed to represent the world itself? But also, why is Imu and Joyboy together, having a blast, Don't tell me you were part of his crew. Did you betray your captain, motherfucker? We have another Blackbeard situation. Imu yelling at the top of his lungs, seemingly also dropped the Shakespearean accent there, saying, "Isn't that right, Joyboy?" Well, for a long time, I've had this great super logical theory that the world of One Piece, in the end, will somehow smile, laugh. And I mean that shit literally. Like, after, the One Piece will be found and the weapons will be used and the war and all that shit, the Red Line will be destroyed or whatever. Obviously, the morphology of the planet will change. So my theory is that somehow, through that geological shift, a smile will be formed. Let me illustrate this shit better with an example. The world, as Vegapunk revealed, is built upon the older world, which drowned after the use of the ancient weapons sunk the ancient cosmos fucking 200 meters below the surface. So, we can imagine a possibility of the sea level dropping to uncover the ruins of that drowned world. And similar to Long Ring, Long Land, of which the shape changes based on the tides, the rise and the decline of the currents and, the ebb and flow. On the high tide, the island appears as a set of multiple islands, disjointed. But on the low tide, it's revealed that they're all interconnected. Anyway, something similar to that, which will reveal a smile. Starting to see you're more of a mystery than I first reckoned. Huh. What's that supposed to mean? Who is this fucker? It's Dragon in his own form. Again, we have that odd, vague distinction between worlds. At least that's what I understand, because why else would Imu say in this world specifically? That only makes sense if another world exists also. Plus, it's been stated multiple times now that Imu cannot stay in this lower world for a long period of time, for some reason. I guess because he comes from a different world, and for some reason it affects him negatively. Takes a toll. Well, in a previous video that has been taken down since, I said that there are two worlds merged in One Piece. And one of the worlds is Imu's evil world. Something like that. But if I understand Imu correctly here, he was saying that they met before in the other world. I'm confusing myself now. Snow. Of course, motherfuckers. Remember how many fucking times did I say the snow is important? Then finally, we get confirmation from Imu himself that snow is important. Hey, I'm not crazy, I've been saying that shit all along, man. And I said that because Luffy, at least at the beginning of the series, had a weird obsession with snow. And now in Elbaf, pretty much in every important scene, in the background it was snowing. Like when Harald died, or when his wife died. And I'm pretty sure the chapter title when he died was Elbaf Snow. Zoro got some rumble balls from Chopper. I guess those are the steel bullets he was talking about. So he was using guns? Well, traditionally, villains in the One Piece world, for some reason throughout One Piece, have used guns. From Higuma in chapter 1, the mountain bandit, to Imu. Okay, yeah, we skipped over some guys there, but like for example, Doflamingo used a gun to kill his father and then his brother, and also to shoot at Law. Or, Kaido executed Oden with a gun, Hodi shot Otohime, Arlong shot at Bellumer, and Celestial Dragons love to use them. They even used it against Luffy when Saint Charlos shot at him, in Sabori. But of course, as we know, Luffy is immune. Suspicious. I don't think that's a coincidence. So that's the rain god, or goddess, Zaza. You know who else can summon rain out of the blue? And it's also a woman. the Fertari D Vivi. She made it rain back in Alabasta. At least that's, one theory. When Luffy defeated Crocodile, as we know, the rain came back. It started raining in that instant. And naturally, the logical connection there is that the defeat of Crocodile is what caused the rainfall. But it has been theorized from way back when that it was Vivi all along. Plus, back in Alabasta, Vivi and Nami both wore a similar thing to what Zaza is wearing here. And let's not forget that Vivi is a dancer. By the way, is that how the giants in Punk Hazard are frozen by the same technique? Ragnir's Niflheim, and they are waiting for the day that someone will come wielding Ragnir once again to free them and command the army, And that's why Rox wanted Harald to take the Devil Fruit, the legendary Devil Fruit of Elbaf, to lead the army of frozen giants. I always thought that it was weird. We never saw Brook's eyes. Even back when he was alive, he was always wearing sunglasses. And of course, after that, he was just a skeleton with no eyeballs. So I figured it was important for some reason. Like, he had those hawk eyes or, the emu eyes. Something like that. But I guess that's also important and makes more sense. If he has some Davy lineage. If we get the picture of young Blackbeard when he was in God Valley, side by side with this Brook here, the young Brook. Come on. They're twins. Young Blackbeard also had the afro, which helps. Just like Dozan. Who the fuck is this guy? As I said before, maybe he is the William of Dozan, the D main guy, the initial D dude. But it feels to me like a very casual way to reveal one of the biggest mysteries persisting for over, 30 years since the beginning of the One Piece publication. To unveil this central to the story secret in such an offhand way just doesn't seem right. It actually reminds me of Dosun. He also used the hammer like Ragnar, Of course, he was a hammerhead shark, so... What am I talking about? The island actually seems pretty small from the overview there, with that big harp on top, which I'm sure Brook could play, because when we first met him he said, I can play any instrument you want, which is actually foreshadowing for the end of the series, because here's a theory. One of the ancient weapons will be used to play music worldwide, and Brook, of course, would be the ancient weapon musician. I like how the second time he's introduced in the story, we got the box there that says Brook, Raider Captain and stuff. Like the first time we saw him in his Dead Bones Brook form. Both times, during his introduction, he's singing Binks Dozan. By the way, quick theory. The guy that Imu mentioned in the beginning of the chapter, Dozan, is actually Binks. That's his real full name, Mr. Dozan Binks. This whole thing though with singing Prepare to Die has me thinking this whole time that maybe that has something to do with Binks Dozan and the Ancient Kingdom guys and girls. Like it was their swan song, but maybe not because it's called Binks Dozan. What the fuck? It's talking about the alcohol of one dude. Well, actually, maybe the whole kingdom was called Binks. Why are we assuming it's a guy? A lot of the themes in this chapter are overarching themes of the whole One Piece story, like music is definitely important. Again, see Binks Dozan. And also, at the end of each arc, we have a grand party with food, music, dancing and shit, laughter. Good times, having fun, as the prince Luven said. This palace is gonna be a lot more fun now. And as we know, Luffy always wanted the musician, cause pirates sing and party and stuff. Well, music, that's one theme. The other is laughter. We saw Brook smiling and laughing, even though he lived in a trash heap by himself after his parents and his brother died of hunger, dining on some frog. I don't know if I need to explain why laughter is important in the One Piece world. The fucking final island where the One Piece is located is called Laughtale and was named by the Roger crew after they discovered the One Piece treasure, and they all laughed some reason. And of course we have a litany of scenes where characters die while either laughing or smiling and shit, you know. I mean, the whole fucking story begins with Roger revealing that his mythical treasure is still out there and shit, and then gets executed while smiling. And you know, Luffy's Joyboy who spreads laughter and happiness and shit and joy. I don't think I need to explain this shit, come on. And then we have the theme of friendship. Another obvious core central idea of One Piece. You need comrades, a crew, a family not related by blood. Remember how I was talking about some themes earlier? Another one that has popped in recently is love. Because, you know, in the earlier One Piece days, there wasn't really any romance, at least in that sense. There was always the thrill of adventure romance. Well, that was up until Dressrosa. The whole arc was kinda around the theme of love. What did the narrator say? Something like, this is the country of love, passion and toys. But recently, like in this arc, there's been a lot of love talk. Well, we have Copacabana, who's like the Sanji of Roger's crew, who said something like, love knows no bounds, when asked about, hey, how did you and the giant over there make love? And then we had, of course, the whole flashback with Rox and Roger, which, curiously enough, was kind of centered around Saki, which, I mean, everyone was in love with, but of course, in the end, it was Rayleigh who claimed her heart. And of course, there was Rox with Eris and Teach, you know, that's a different kind of love. And also Harald with his sons. I mean, literally right before he died, he said, I love you to Loki. And with his late wife, I guess he had two late wives, but I'm not talking about Estrid. I'm talking about Ida, who was the loving one of the two. The other one was hatred personified. Anyway, Ida, obviously, through love, changed, first of all, Harald, who was a rogue, a brute before, you know, uncivilized and shit, and made him more accepting of others, other races, other countries even. But also, she changed Loki, who was a hateful piece of shit, but of course, justifiably. He was tossed out of a cliff by his own mother as a baby. That would fuck up anyone. Actually, that would kill everyone, but Loki's a special case. Yeah, all those were instances of love's importance. But of course, also, again, super recently, we had the parent-teacher conference there who's driven by their love for their children, chose to sacrifice themselves with them. First of all, they tried to save them, but since they couldn't, that was their resolution, their final decision. Now, speaking of that, the other kind, the romantic kind of love, between the love-struck, they're infatuated, you get what I'm saying, the couples, that's it. Here's a theory. What if, since we're going down that road, you know how Imu has like different forms, seemingly? Like, he has that shadowy form, that thumb-looking figure that resides in Mary Joa, and he has the newly revealed godlike badass form that came down to the lower realm, to Elbaf, to fight Loki and Luffy. Well, what if the Mary Joa form that is always shrouded, that looks like he's underneath some kind of robe, what if that's a wedding dress? Because she, maybe it's a female in that form, I don't know, was left at the steps of the altar by Joyboy, who turned to piracy instead of settling down. Then we have the titular song, sung by both Brook and Shuri, about death, kinda, but it's also about life because it says like, from little to big animals, or from slaves to kings. When you die, everyone's the same in death. It's kind of like what Cobra said back in Alabasta when he was at the royal baths with the Straw Hats, when he bowed down to thank them, and someone said, I think it was Zoro, I don't think a king is supposed to bow down. And Cobra's like, without the clothes, when you're naked, everyone's the same. I'm paraphrasing, but the idea, the concept is the same. Also in the live action, I don't know if it is limited to the live action, but I remember it from there. Vivi said, a crown is but a hat. and the kingdom is the people. Now I'm getting mixed memories. But the message is clear. Deep down, we are one and the same. Human beings. Sake. And I think that's why it's important for Oda to show celestial dragons resent the idea of being human. They all lambasted, chastised Homing when he wanted to leave Mary Joa to live as human, and he actually said, well, we are humans. We always have been. And they consider that blasphemy. And also when Homing, down in the lower realm, as they say, was actually hunted down by the rest of humanity for the crimes and all the pain inflicted by the celestial dragons on humanity as a whole. Yeah, when that came back to bite Homing's ass, he called back at Mary Jo and asked for help. He asked to at least take his wife and children back at Mary Joa. The guy on the other side of the snail line said, it was your choice or whatever, and then, don't call me back human. They use it like a derogatory term, a pejorative term. By the way, music is like the universal language, right? Between humanity. It's like a thing that connects everyone, that can resonate literally with humans across every country, every continent, every different language barrier, even actually every time in history. It unifies. Now, what else is universal amongst all different races and, cultures and shit? Fucking laughter. Now, through music and laughter and having fun, partying, celebrating, you can build the foundation for connection, for, friendship and maybe even love. I don't know. I'm just saying shit. But music is like the centerpiece of that chain. That's why I said in the previous chapter that one of the ancient weapons will be used to play music worldwide. Though in the One Piece world, everyone speaks the same language. But of course, there are still differences, major differences between even neighboring islands, because they're all isolated. They literally live in different time periods in some instances. And we actually have an example in the story of a war, a 400-year-old war, being ended by playing music. In a way, when Luffy rang the bell in Skypiea, everyone was delighted to hear that angelic sound of the bell. I remember everyone praising its beauty. But also after the war was over and Enel was defeated and shit, they all gathered around the fire and drank and sang and played music and danced and all that good stuff. And Lil Brook, even though he's facing his imminent death, has the determination to start singing. But his dear friend, Prince Leuven, saves him at the last second. And saves him from poverty too, bringing him into the royal residence. But more importantly, bringing him into his family. Solidified by the "I love this kid," which makes Brook burst into tears of bliss. I guess he's happy to be alive. Similar to the scene where he joins the Straw Hat crew and entering this new pirate family resulted in him crying, even though he was a skeleton at that point. And he exclaimed, "I'm so glad to be alive." Well, at some point we have to close this shit, so I'm gonna leave you with this. My conclusion is, the One Piece is actually a song. One piece of music. Bedridden for months. Don't tell me one of those bastards got her pregnant with Shuri. So cute. She takes after her mother. But not the father. Until reveals that she's smitten in love with the king. But she just wanna be by his side. In proximity, not actually being his wife. Because she thinks he's out of her league, I guess. He's a fucking king. But then they got married. It's because one of the celestial dragons impregnated her, and the king, because of his kind nature and shit, decided to join with her in holy matrimony and claim the child as his own. and not the bastard of a celestial dragon. Maybe the guy in the end, the guy who was sitting at the steps, the guy smoking the cigar, is actually Shuri's father. I'm just saying all that shit because of her weird eyes that are absent from either of her parents. Hey, maybe the cigar guy, though, has those pupils because Oda didn't let us see his eyes there. They were covered by the brim of the hat. But I mean, it's very suspicious, though, that Brook even mentioned the whole drifting of the Celestial Dragon event. The kingdom of Hesperia got covered, shrouded by a thick mist, as the narrator says. That mist disintegrated the instruments of the country. I mean, the whole country, kinda. So the whole country got decomposed. Because music. So what the fuck is up with this smoke? That's not some natural shit now, is it? Maybe this was the guy at the end of the chapter again, with a cigar. He had smoker's devil fruit. That's his awakening. Every mystery can be solved with that motherfucker there. Well, that fucking smoke shit killed hundreds of people. And one of them is Lady Candle. Yeah, right. I'm sure some government assassin, one of the god's knights perhaps, veiled by the deep mist, snuck in and murdered the queen. Because the fog, I'm pretty sure it was lifted after her death, right? After the mission was successful. Because if we see in the panel with Candel's picture there in the funeral, the fog is still there, and it's only then that it starts to clear. Brook says something interesting to Shuri. The way you move, sometimes it's like you can see the future. Courtesy of the cursed eye there. I know you can say that shit about observation haki, I guess. There's a whole category of future sight, the Katakuri special. But I mean, is that even worth mentioning it by Oda? If it's that simple of an explanation? I don't think so. Fortunately, Brook is there with a hidden bonus deluxe track to inspire hope amongst the Hesperia citizens. A song about the One Piece? Well, he's talking about a land that makes their enemies tremble with fear, Shake the world, as Whitebird said about the One Piece. A land they won't come near. Is that the One Piece land, also known as Laughtail? Has the whole government actually tried to go there? Do they even want the One Piece? There's a hope for the samurai and the giants. Well, the obvious connection there would be Wano and Elbaf, which are countries that the world government avoids due to their military might and shit. They are spooked. But, I mean, he could be talking about the ancient kingdom, where I would presume that every race was living there harmoniously. Because right after that lyric, he goes, "It exists," like all the tales spoke. Again, this is similar to Whitebeard's speech in Marineford, when he said, "One Piece is real." Now the following lyric, I don't know what the fuck that could mean. He's talking about bees. And he closes with, "Said to consider your views, cause we got nothing left to lose." I know the translators have to make this shit rhyme, but I'm not getting what the fuck he's talking about. Well, let me say this as an observation. You see, this page is divided into 3 parts. On the top part, we see the people in distress, with tears in their eyes, filled with worry about their future and the country as a whole. And then Brook pulls out an acoustic guitar and begins to sing. Now, in the second part of the page is the bulk of the song, during which the crowd there gathered around Brook is mid-transformation. I'm talking about their transformation of their, emotional state. I mean, you can see a woman there starts to wipe off tears. Another one is in a prayer stance. So Brook is actively changing them psychologically in their mindset, their will. I don't know. And interestingly, on that left panel where we see some decaying objects, Oda chose to showcase a guitar and a barrel. So music and alcohol being sake. And finally, on the lower part of the page, we have the finale, the crescendo of that musical performance, which makes everyone burst out in laughter. Even if they still have some tears, they're dripping down their cheeks. Anyway, I said all that to say, I think that's a concise way from Oda to showcase the role of music in the story, to turn frowns into smiles, crying into laughter, despair into hope, and all that shit, you get me, right? But if Brook's song has a double meaning, a subliminal message, like those songs that when you play them backwards, they praise the devil, something like that. Anyway, if there is a second meaning, and it's about One Piece, then it adds credence to the theory of it being a song. Is that the same song from before? The Y'all Better Buzz Off song. Is that the same song that's allegedly talking about the One Piece? Because if that's the case, it would make sense to say that the island is on the map's edge as the final island of the Grand Line. And the thing about their name that cannot be erased. That's like saying you can kill. How did Whitebeard say that shit in Marineford again? Something about you may try to kill them, but their flames will live on. Pretty sure he was talking about the Will of D. Brook is making his way to the palace, but before he enters, we have another lyric that says, the edge of the map shines mighty bright. Not sure about that, but at some point, we have to make a connection with the sun, right? Because of the main figure from the ancient kingdom lore, Joyboy / sun god Nika. And right after that, Brook goes, if we snap for real, the shaking is all you feel. I already talked about this, but this is reminiscent of the infamous Whitebeard line about finding the One Piece treasure. It will shake the world. Also have an extra theory about the world of One Piece physically changing after the treasure is found and used, changed geologically somehow to reveal the shape of a smile. The world will laugh because now it's crying or something. And that's the whole turn the world upside down bullshit. You gotta make the frown into a smile. By the way, how's Brook getting out of this? It's a 1v3, and I'm pretty sure every one of them is above his league. Maybe he will use that suspiciously placed piano in the back. Maybe the key is playing the keys. Maybe he will defeat them through the power of a virtuoso perfect performance of a Baroque sonata in C minor. Hey yo, the guy's the dad, I can see the eyes. Wow, this might be the first time I'm actually correct about a theory. Knight of God, Saint Manmeyer Gro, my guy. Now all we need to continue this streak of success is for him to have Smoker's Devil Fruit. And also Brook to play a sonata in the piano in the back. No wait, this is just a dream, right? Again, this question has been said like a million times in the series. I just hope that in the end of One Piece, Luffy's not gonna just, wake up inside the barrel in East Blue and say, oh, that was a great sleep. At the end, starts rambling about some power which lies dormant in those who possess that trait. What could that be, that power? As I said before, it could be fortune telling, seeing the future. By the way, what if Imu really desires those oculi, those eyes? Because he has them. We never saw the other eye, right? It's covered by those bangs, and as Shuri prepares to deal the finishing blow, Brook starts reminiscing, remembers her as a kid, an angel, he says. And so, he lets go of his weapon. All the while, Shuri's blade inches closer, and I would assume she's ready to kill him by using techniques that he taught her. I think Oda here displays the difference between Brook, who still has a heart, still a human with emotions, and this cold-hearted demon bitch. Brook can't bring himself to harm the child of his savior, even if that child killed his savior. And on the other hand, Shuri has zero reservations of killing, first of all, the man who raised her. Biological dad or not, she chose to side with a sperm donor. But also, she doesn't hesitate to murder the guy she supposedly was in love with and Brook makes his choice. It's like what King Riku said back in Dressrosa. If murder is the only way to survive, then I choose death. Well, I guess that's the difference. He says the giants during the Void Century were defeated because they were trying to save their children. So the 20 Kingdom Alliance used children as hostages. That was their ultimate play. I'm guessing it was something like, we're gonna sacrifice ourselves to ensure the future. Kinda like what Harald said before dying. It's all about the future, the children, something like that. So Imu employs the same strategy to subjugate the giants, because he's saying that history always repeats itself. Are we stuck in a time loop? I'm guessing that's where the concept of fate comes in. And also Luffy, who as I said before, is the destiny destroyer, the freer from fate. That shit doesn't apply to Luffy. Alright, before we close, let me share my quick thoughts about that history repeating thing. First of all, back in Lockdown, the narrator said legends that endure in the future were events that took place in the distant past. Well, I mean, that makes sense, because, I mean, that's what a legend means, right? It's an account of something worth mentioning that happened long ago. But if history has a cycle, maybe the reason that those legends remain is because they keep re-happening. And of course, in the same page, we have the mock execution of the future Pirate King in the same platform that the previous Pirate King got executed. Next, we have Robin in Skypiea, when she was fighting against Yama, this fat fuck that kept destroying the ancient giant ruins. Anyway, Robin says, fools who don't respect the past are doomed to repeat it. So it's about respect. It's like the opposite of what Imu said. Imu says ignorance of the significance of what is occurring is irrelevant. Imu is of the opinion that it will keep repeating no matter what. Later, when Robin discovered the poneglyph letters on a wall of ancient Jaya, when she deciphered it, it said, hold the truth in your heart, keep your mouth silent. We are the ones who weave history. What the fuck? Weave history? And then she continues with the reverberations of the great bell. I don't know, it's very cryptic. Well, I don't think I can decode it right now, but I thought it was interesting to mention. Well, maybe they meant something like what Robin said at the end of Skypiea, when she was talking to the Sandia chief. She said, if you connect and read all the poneglyphs in the world, they will become one document that will fill the Void Century that is missing. And in that panel, where we see the scattered poneglyphs, some of them are connected, attached to something like a string, like they are woven together, you know. But if history is repeating itself, does that mean the poneglyphs have written prophecies in them? Let's fast forward to Ohara and then turn back the clock to go to the Robin's flashback when the old government was executing the Buster call against Ohara. The scholars there, you know, tried to save and did manage to save the books from the library of Ohara and shit, the Tree of Knowledge. Robin's mom says history is humanity's greatest asset, and that we should, you know, pass on the knowledge and shit to the next generation. But then she goes, Ohara wasn't trying to expose history, but to retrieve and protect the voices of the past. Then, when the scholars were throwing the books into the lake, they said, we have to save the words of our predecessors going back several thousand years. I mean, so if history is repeating itself, we must have some indication from those books. Robin must know something if it goes that far back. And let me end with this Clover quote. Right when the Tree of Knowledge finally fell down after it got crisped, burned from the cannon fire. Anyway, he says, so this is the history that man has chosen. But is it a choice or is it fate? Speaking about the inevitability of history and shit, I'm reminded of the infamous Rayleigh scene at Sabori when Robin asked him, hey, did you guys find out the true history? And he said,
yes, we know.
But then he goes, even if I told you everything in history right now, there is nothing you could do about it. Is that because everything is predetermined You can't escape destiny. Well, I mean, there's no way that's true because of Luffy, as we said before. But anyway. But speaking about reoccurring instances and themes and shit, the giants that Imu was talking about, were they the frozen army of Galela Warhammer giants that are stuck in Punk Hazard? Are those the guys that bent the knee trying to save children? Because if that's the case, was the whole plotline then in Punk Hazard trying to rescue those giant children from Caesar's experiments? Was that like a hint? Alright, last thing that came to my mind.
Imu is Robin's dad.
A possible foreshadow about this. Remember Sol, Jaguar D Sol. He was captured by the method of freezing, trying to save a kid. Kid Robin. Watch out, the hammer! Oh, this is prime time for Usopp to wield the prophesized 5-ton hammer. 5 in Alabasta and later 10-ton. Let's see. So is that what Scopper is alluding to when he's talking about uncertainty? You have to be as sure as Luffy, who proclaims in the face of the king of the world that he is gonna become king of the pirates. I mean, Luffy has been the most certain about achieving his goals throughout the series. The only time he wasn't certain was after his biggest failure, letting his brother Ace die in front of him, and then went in shock. But when he woke up later in Amazon Lily, and after Jinbei calmed him down a bit, he said, "What pirate king?" while crying, right? "I'm so weak, couldn't even save my brother." Something like that. So that was the only time Luffy doubted himself, doubted that he could achieve his dream. So are Sanji's doubts about achieving his dream of finding the All Blue? I mean, he never really took it seriously. Even in his introduction, when he was talking to Luffy about joining the crew, he said, "We both have stupid dreams." And that was one of the reasons he joined the crew. But also, in Fishman Island, it was said, jokingly, I guess, but he was like, "This is my dream," when they were in the Mermaid Cove, and he was surrounded by beautiful mermaids and shit. I think it was Usopp who said, "I thought your dream was finding the All Blue." And Sanji goes, "This is my All Blue." But it's kind of cool that in this chapter, where we learn about Sanji's worries, doubts, uncertainties, Zoro believes in him. Zoro, of all people. Then Imu creates that bell bullshit, but it doesn't do anything until it rings. And if I understand correctly, the bell rang because Imu moved his hand upwards, right? Because on the panel where he first spawned it, it's like above his mouth, approximately. And then on the other panel, when it rings, it's on the same level as his hidden left eye. This technique is called stigma, which comes from a Greek word that literally means a mark on your body, usually like a dot, like the ones that this motherfucker's body is riddled with. Now, why is Imu suddenly pretending to be Quasimodo and starts ringing bells right when Luffy shows up? Now hear me out. Back in the day, probably like a decade ago, there was a theory about the meaning of the D initial. And what's unique about that theory is that it was not talking about a word that begins with a D, like, dream, but rather that it was a symbol, which is not exclusive to this theory exactly, because there's also another theory that says it depicts a smile. Well, that's for another day, but the theory I'm talking about said that the D resembles a bell, sideways, especially if you include in the picture the two dots that are present, for example, in Luffy's bounty poster, and also in the last panel of this chapter, where it says Saint Nerona Imu versus Monkey D Luffy. If you look at that panel, the D, with this font especially, does kinda resemble a bell, especially with the placement of those dots, which are in the middle of the D, and not, where it usually is on a text, down below. Well, this is not my theory. I don't even remember from where I've heard it first time or read it. Maybe it was actually read it. Well, then the question arises. Why the fuck would you have a picture of a bell inside your fucking name? Like what? And also, how the fuck does the whole Wheel of the Bell make sense? Unfortunately, I've completely forgot the whole theory, except, that core idea. But I'm pretty sure it was related to the Golden Bell in Skypiea, also known as the Fire of Sandora. And now Mr. Nerona Imu created a bell that's on fire. And the name Sandora meant the skull's right eye. And notice that in the panel where Imu created the bell, it's right in front of his the other eye. Okay, it's the left eye. But there's another connection that I made, in my mind at least, when I read this chapter. When I saw that panel, I thought, that rings a bell. Because in the previous chapter, right before the end, Imu was like, history always repeats itself. And in my reaction review, whatever, about that chapter, I said that's kinda similar to what Robin said in Skypiea when she was protecting the ancient giant ruins. She said that fools who don't respect history are doomed to repeat it. Anyway, in one of those ancient giant ruins that she was guarding, when she deciphered it, it said, "We are the ones who weave history with the reverberations of the great bell." And now this guy starts ringing bells. So the only logical conclusion is Imu was one of those ancient giants. He's also Robin's dad, but that's a theory for another day. I don't know. Tell me if I'm crazy in the comments below. Well, Imu rings the bell for a second time, trying to attack Luffy, who manages to evade the blow by throwing his coat away. Rest in peace, coat. Along with that smiling black flame. And interestingly, this time, even though the bell, disappeared or became that swirling black beam or whatever, the ringing, is still playing. Unfortunately, I can't read Japanese musical theory, the notes. Well, what we can safely conclude about this motherfucker is that he's very intertwined with music. Because remember in his introduction, when the black beams were shooting down from that massive pentagram in the sky, some tune started playing, and the houses, along with the trees, started singing. That was even before he actually landed on West Castle. It seemed like everything inside that created circle from the black flames, first of all, turned half black. It was kind of like it was demonized, and then started singing. Everything gets in tune with his rhythm inside that specific range. Because as we saw, right, when he jumped away with Summers, the houses went back to normal. So maybe that omen thing from Imu, that power, is controlling the rhythm that's in all things. The rhythm that Zoro was talking about when he was in that near-death state versus Mr. One. When he said, I can feel something alive in the falling rocks. Something like breathing. The rocks breathing. The trees have a heartbeat. The earth itself. That whole breath of all things, or rhythm. Imu controls that rhythm. Maybe Imu himself is the bell. And we saw what Luffy does to bells, right? Or Bellamy. Let's talk about Sanji, who's ready to ascend to the throne. He's been Mr. Prince long enough. It's time to become a king. Well, according to Mr. Gyaban, Sanji does indeed possess the traits of one who might awaken it. And by it, I mean Conqueror's Haki. But Sanji's burdened with uncertainty, as Copper says, and he closes with, "You must be a king yourself if you truly wish to make Luffy the Pirate King." That's why it's called King's Haki. As I said in my first reaction of the chapter, that uncertainty that Gyaban is talking about, those doubts, probably are related to achieving one's dream. Because right after, we see Luffy in his Gear 5 Nika form declaring that he's gonna become king of the pirates, right in the face of the king of the world. And Luffy is the perfect example of someone who is certain about achieving his goal, seeing his dream through and through, from chapter 1 to chapter 1107. And literally, I'm not gonna even look it up, but I'm sure he said the exact quote of becoming king of the pirates in all those 3 chapters. 1000 and this one, of course, that's right in front of my face. And the only time when his resolve wavered, when the doubts started creeping in, was right after Marineford, right after witnessing his brother dying right in front of him and being unable to do anything to help. Well, right after, he went into shock, into unconsciousness, a coma. But when he woke up, after realizing that Ace is actually dead, he said, "What pirate king? I can't protect anyone," while crying. Anyway, that was the only time in the whole series that he wasn't 1000% sure that he would eventually become king of the pirates. But his certainty depends on the people around him, on his crew and their capabilities. And specifically, Luffy said to Sanji in Whole Cake Island, "Without you, I can't become king of the pirates." And that sentiment has been there since Arlong Park, when he was talking to Arlong and said, "I can't use swords, I can't cook, I can't navigate, I can't even lie. So I need those guys. So I need my crew to help through his journey of finding the One Piece, becoming Pirate King, and living happily ever after." But let's go back to Sanji. His dream, supposedly, is finding the All Blue. However, besides that first time in Baratie where he revealed that, I can recall one time where he actually did something to come closer to that dream's realization, to the All Blue's discovery. He's hoping that he would find it through the journey around the world. Coincidentally, I guess if you travel around the whole world, chances are you're gonna find something related to it. But it's not only that, it's his whole attitude. It seems like he never took his own dream seriously. As I said in my other video, even in his introduction, when he joined the crew, he said to Luffy, "We both have stupid dreams." But what I forgot to mention is that previously, in that same arc, when Zoro lost the duel to Mihawk and he was bleeding profusely, looking like he was about to die, Sanji was like, "It's easy. Abandon your dream. Abandon your ambition." And he said that shit right after witnessing Zoro refuse to take even one step back while he had a knife piercing his guts, because he said, "If I retreat even one step, my ambition, all my dreams will be lost. So he'd rather die than give up." And Sanji's response was, "It's easy, just give up." Now compare that reaction, that attitude, to Luffy's, who jumps towards Mihawk. And of course, Mihawk avoids that shit easily and then asks him, "Hey kid, what is your goal?" And what does Luffy say? His usual catchphrase, with zero hesitation, to be king of the pirates. And even Mihawk is like, "Shit, that's even more difficult than trying to defeat me." But Luffy doesn't give a fuck. And finally we get Zoro's promise to Luffy that he will never lose again until he defeats this guy and becomes the world's greatest swordsman. So he didn't get that discouraged, He just needed to recalibrate. He understood the difference, the vast, humongous, almost unreachable mountain of a task that he has to climb, and yet he makes the oath in the presence of the man that just annihilated him. Anyway, back to Sanji. He did at least take the first step in this arc of starting the journey. But on the way, he got sidetracked. Firstly, in Thriller Bark, during his fight against Absalom, that perverted monstrosity that had consumed the clear fruit, Sanji says, "You're the man who stole my dream." because when he was a little kid, he saw a picture book with devil fruits, and he was like, even if it meant that I was to become cursed, I would eat it gladly, because he wished to become the invisible man. Did you forget your actual dream, sir? Well, at least towards the end of that fight, he said that he doesn't give a damn about that dream anymore. Now we can refocus. Well, at least until we reach Fishman Island. Even before entering, Sanji was like, finally, this is the paradise I've dreamed since I was a kid. I mean, maybe he's more ambitious than we thought. He's full of dreams, this fucker. And then he starts bleeding from the nose. And Chopper said, oh, he'll die, from bleeding. And Sanji goes, I'd rather bleed to death while thinking, I don't know, naked mermaids than live on with my dream unfulfilled. So that was Sanji's equivalent of Zoro's speech versus Mihawk when he said, I'd rather die than take a step back. That's Sanji's version. Nose bleeding to death. Anyway, after we actually get in, when the crew went to the Mermaid Cove and Sanji was surrounded by mermaids of distinguished beauty and shit, he started crying and he proclaims, I finally found it, the All Blue. So you see, there's a clear distinction of how seriously Luffy and Zoro take their dream compared to Sanji, all the way from Baratie. Oda displayed the difference in determination. But that's kind of a consequence of the nature of his dream, because it's a lot more vague than either becoming king of the pirates or the world's greatest swordsman, even if those are very hard, near impossible, treacherous paths. At least, there is a path. You kinda know what you have to do to achieve it. Now, how the fuck do you find the All Blue? Maybe that adds to the uncertainty. And of course, Scopper was talking about helping Luffy achieve his dream, but it's not actually a question of loyalty with either Zoro or Sanji. It is the ambition. And that is perfectly illustrated in the scene in Thriller Bark, where after Kuma did his Urususuk and fucked up everyone, after Zoro tried and failed to defeat him, he said, take my life instead of Luffy's, and tells Kuma that is a worthy exchange because that's the head of the man who would one day become the greatest swordsman. So even in that circumstance, right before death, his ambition was strong, but he would sacrifice himself for the captain. So we have both the personal ambition and loyalty in full display. Now Sanji also walked up at that moment to offer himself as a sacrifice. And what does he say? What about your ambition? Talking to Zoro. To me, in this scene, Sanji is like saying, your ambition is greater, so it would be better if I died instead. Because right after, when he confronts Kuma, he's not declaring his actual dream, his goal, like Zoro just did. He's saying, I'm bound to become the most dangerous person in the crew. I don't know if you're top 3, if you consider Robin too. I get that saying, I'm the man who's gonna find the All Blue is not exactly cool in that instance. But isn't that your dream? Your ambition? What is that vague shit about being dangerous? So I think in that scene, the difference between Zoro and Sanji's ambition is portrayed, while also showing the similarity in their loyalty to their captain. So that's pretty much it. And I'm gonna close with this. Hey Sanji, we haven't heard you say it. Say that you wanna find the All Blue. Peace out. And we got Luffy eating one piece of meat. It looks like some medium rare steak. By the way, the One Piece treasure is one giant piece of dragon meat. The dragon that Ryuma butchered. Meat for the worldwide banquet, the party at the end of the series. Lord of the Wailing Void. Oh shit. Is that one of the swords that was put down in front of the empty throne from the first 20? This guy is one of those 20, right? And Imu is listening to Joyboy calling his cell phone because as we see in the next panel, there is some fucking buzzing sound when Imu picks up the phone. And again, in the following panel, when Joyboy asks, who are you? We hear the same buzzing when Imu introduces himself. In the third person, of course. Also, these panels are completely black. I don't know if I didn't wanna spoil this shit, or that we are like in the void, as the title says right above it. But at the very least, when Joyboy announces himself, we do see Something is lit up. His smile. Now, since this is from Imu's perspective, you could say that Imu was stuck inside that void, surrounded by nothing but darkness, alone, until he made this connection with Joyboy, and he pulled him out from that dark place. That was the start of their great friendship. You know, before they had a nasty breakup that resulted in Imu banning phones, leaving us with fucking telepathic snails to communicate. But is this an actual snail or phone call, or is it something else entirely? I know that Oda uses that type of text box, that octagon type, when characters are talking through a snail phone, but what if they were actually face to face, but Imu was behind some glass door or something, see-through, you know, because he was like imprisoned, trapped inside a high-tech solitary confinement, powered by electricity, of course, to explain the buzzing. And they were talking through an intercom, and Joyboy decided to free Imu, like, you know, how Luffy freed Loki in this arc. And remember what they were talking about Loki, that he's cursed. Don't let him out because every catastrophe, every disaster, everything bad stems from this motherfucker, the accursed prince. Anyway, what if in Imu's case, the rumors were actually true and all that evil shit was packed in there, like a Pandora's box situation? Either way, from reading this page, it seems to me that Imu and Joyboy were boys. They were cool, you know? Because when Imu says, yes, Joyboy is already dead, he seems kinda angry. He has some popping veins in his forehead. To me, he doesn't look like the guy who committed the murder of Joyboy. Also, the only time this stone-faced fucker showed some kind of emotion was in another instance that he had a flashback of Joyboy, a memory of them laughing together, saying something like, "The world itself rejoices in dominion." And then he had that flashback where I think Joyboy said, "Isn't that right?" And then this guy screams on top of his lungs, "Isn't that right, Joyboy?" He shouted angrily. But that anger comes from the realization that Joyboy is not here anymore to have another laugh with him, you know, a good time, to be his friend. Perhaps. Now, another scenario, curtain number 3, is that Joyboy somehow found this guy who was the king of the world already in his little void dimension, somewhere sitting alone in his empty throne, and convinced him to get outside. He was like, "What are you doing here stuffed in this black room? Come on, let's go get some fresh air. Fuck this ruling the world shit. And let's go have an adventure." And that's when shit hit the fan. When Imu abandoned his position as king of the world to hunt treasure, having adventures and partying and drinking and all that good shit. That was the trigger for the beginning of the Great War. It was to get Saint Nerona Imu back on the chair. I'm kind of freestyling here, but maybe the reason the Roger Pirates laughed in the face of Joyboy's treasure is that because they saw Imu wilding the fuck out. But why does every move from Imu end with an explosion? Also, Zoro said before that the black flames, the omens that Imu blasted in his face, mutated, turned into bullets. So Imu likes guns, huh? You know who else really likes to use gun attacks? Fucking Luffy. You know, we have the Gomu Gomu bullet, pistol, rifle, bazooka, and the list goes on, you know. I've always wondered, why is that the naming convention for Luffy's attacks? Probably just to sound cool. And also because in chapter 1, Kid Luffy, before consuming the Gomu Gomu or Hito Hito, whatever, the fruit, he says to Shanks, "My punch is as strong as a pistol." So we have the age-old battle between gunpowder versus rubber bullets. I'm on Imu's side on that one. World government is always shrouded in mystery. I don't know why, but that grabbed my attention. Like it has a deeper meaning, something hidden. Maybe because of all those suspicious dots. Or maybe because this guy was also shrouded in mystery when we met him in Thriller Bark. Inside the Florian Triangle, the most mysterious and shrouded place in the One Piece world. I'm sure there is a connection between those huge shadows that were hidden behind the mist. As the narrator said, when we were leaving the Florian Triangle, he goes, "It is a deep, ancient mystery." Imu produces his third blade. So is it random which blade is gonna show up? I mean, it shouldn't be. But it's like he was surprised when he saw the axe. He was like, oh my. And then he goes, how unfortunate. Like it was up to chance and it was unlucky. He and Killingham now have access to them because of the omens. And they both get the swords of their families, of their respective houses. So it can't be random then. Or do these fuckers only have access to their own, family inherited weapons? But Imu can reach any one of them, but the downside is it's random. By the way, for some reason, I have stuck in my mind that thing I said about Shanks. That Oda was highlighting his right eye and purposely hiding his left. And I noticed on the previous page, we see Luffy's right eye. Of course, Imu only has the right eye shown every time since his introduction. And then on this page that he gets impaled, again, we only see Luffy's right eye. I don't know if there's anything to it, but I'll keep an eye on it. Loki says this is the perfect chance to defeat Imu. And Harudin says, you're right, I'm gonna take him down, while we see his right eye. And one more time, we see Luffy with his left eye hiding. Only the right one is visible. I guess this whole right eye thing was bullshit, because here we see Zoro's right eye. Of course, he only can see from that one for now. Sanji's left. Again, the other one's covered by the hair. And then Luffy's both eyes. But fuck the eyes. What an ill-mannered trio of siblings. But is Imu part of a trio of siblings himself? Him, Joyboy, and Davy Jones. The first, or whatever. And I mean, as we said before, the number 3 seemingly plays an important role with this fucker. He has those 3 skulls on his skirt, and also those 3 rings. I mean, 2 of them hanging and the other is the belt. I don't know if that counts. But he also said that corruption, covenant, power, those 3 things together form a trinity. When he was explaining his abilities to Loki, he said those 3 form the trinity known as Dominion. He also provides 3 types of contracts, of covenants. So his actual power is tied to a trinity. And of course, in this chapter, he gets 3 swords, 2 swords and an axe, 3 weapons to finish off Luffy. Another thing I noticed is that we talked about the importance of the number 3, right? And that Imu used 3 blades to deal 3 blows to kill Luffy. Well, for the first blow with his void sword, he used his right hand. Then in this chapter, for the second blow, he uses the left hand. And now he swings the axe with both. So, conclusion, the number 3 is important. The end.